Now, shortly after the release of the OISL report in Geneva, I met with Ravina Shamdasani, the spokesperson for the High Commissioner of Human Rights, and this is what she had to say. The Sri Lankan government was of the stance, or was under the impression, that it may be able to hold its own transparent domestic investigation. So, isn't this a surprise move by the United Nations?
Not at all. I mean, in fact, what our report has found is that there are serious indications that international crimes may have been committed. These are war crimes, crimes against humanity, and there's a pattern of violations. We're not talking about pockets of violations, but patterns. And these patterns are systemic violations. They take coordination, they take resources. These crimes need to be handled very, very delicately at a very high level. And we believe that this is extremely important because in Sri Lanka, you've had several attempts at justice, several commissions that have been set up, and they have been a failure. Victims have lost their trust. And these recommendations go to the heart of what the victims need to see true justice and accountability in Sri Lanka.
However, the High Commissioner himself in his statement recently said that he welcomes the transitional justice in Sri Lanka as well as the new vision of the new government. So despite this report has come out.
No, indeed. The changes over the past 9 months have been quite laudable, and the High Commissioner has commended the leadership shown by the President. However, this does not change the fact that very serious crimes were committed over a space of 30 years. And we're not just talking about the last phases of the conflict. We are talking about systemic violations. That's number one. Number two, there are systemic institutional reforms and changes that need to take place. Many times in Sri Lanka's history, you have seen hope, you have seen a change of government, and you have seen moves towards a better future. And then there has been a reversion back to the so-called white van mentality. This time, the change needs to be lasting and sustainable. And this is not something that the international community is imposing upon Sri Lanka or that is being dictated to them. No, this is about a partnership where we will help and we will accompany the process of justice and accountability. And the key word here is non-recurrence.
So do you not believe that this report undermines the efforts of the Sri Lankan government in its reconciliation process?
No, absolutely not. Far from undermining anybody's efforts, this report is an attempt at engaging and an attempt at really taking the justice and reconciliation process forward. As I said, there's a lot of skepticism on the part of the victims. And again, the focus has to be on the victims and not on the government. In the course of our research for this report, we sensed that the victims are still very afraid to speak out. There are many reasons for this. Some of them have actually faced reprisals in the past for speaking out.
Ms. Ravina, what happens next? What should the Sri Lankan government do?
What comes next is the follow-up. There have been, as I said, many investigations into what occurred in Sri Lanka, especially in the last phases of the conflict. But in this case, we've examined, much further, much deeper issues over an extended period of time. What has to come next is actions, judicial investigations and prosecutions, and a process of reconciliation, and a process of institutional reform, and a process of legal reform.